This podcast is not intended as legal advice. If you're in need of legal services, please contact 602-375-6752 to set up a consultation. You're listening to the official podcast of the Law Office of Libby Banks, Estate Planning, Wills, and Trusts. Your estate planning attorneys in the Phoenix Valley.
All right, I'm Libby Banks, and we're here with the Law Office of Libby Banks podcast. I want to welcome my new attorney, Allison Gloss. I'm so happy that she found us and that we were able to hire her just about a month and a half ago, I think. Yeah. So, Allison, I thought it might be fun to have you talk a little bit about your educational experience and how you ended up in the estate planning world for your practice area.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as my background, I'm an Arizona native. I grew up in Gilbert in the East Valley. And then after high school, I decided to go to the University of Arizona for my undergraduate degree. I studied international relations and political science there. And then after I graduated, I decided that I wanted to go to law school. So I took a year off in between undergrad and law school, and I worked at a law firm, and we did zoning and land use law. And I was really interested in that. It was kind of an interesting practice area. But then I ended up going to law school at Arizona State University, so I kind of switched sides as far as that school rivalry goes. But in law school, I continued to work at that zoning and land use firm, and then upon graduation, I got a different job and was doing real estate litigation, and I wasn't very happy in the litigation world. It was a lot of fighting, which isn't really suited to my personality. But my law firm decided to open up an estate planning practice, and I fell in love with that, with this work. It feels really meaningful. It feels like I'm making a difference in my community, and it feels like I'm really getting to know my clients and their situations and building a plan for them. And so to get more business in that role, I joined a networking group called BNI, and in BNI, I got a referral from somebody in the Biltmore Connectors group. Or Biltmore Connections group, and that woman told me that she couldn't send this client to the estate planning attorney in her group because they were all the way out in Mesa, and so that's where my law office was. And so I took that referral, and then I was like, oh, I wonder who that estate planning attorney is. And I looked at the roster and I saw Andy's name on there, and I was like, oh, who's Libby Banks? And I looked at your guys' website, and I thought it was so cool that you were a female business owner. I was like, wow, she would be a great person to work for and learn from. So I reached out to you on LinkedIn and I asked if you were hiring, and it worked out really seamlessly with the timing. And yeah, here I am, and I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, it was perfect timing. Mm-hmm. It just could not have come together more perfectly. Mm-hmm. So, and thinking about the litigation side of things, I got into this field as well because I was doing probate litigation. Mm-hmm. So working with an attorney who did a lot of the big will fights and whatnot. And initially he hired me to do like some appeals and some of the really fascinating research questions. So I found it just very interesting and fun until he started trusting me enough to start meeting with the clients. And I started to realize, oh, this is horrible. This is really horrible for the clients. And again, my personality is not the big
fight. Let's duke it out. Mine is let's all get along.
Yeah,
Right?
like, and everybody just be happy.
Right, exactly. Let's try to avoid these problems. And that is what so much of estate planning is about, is avoiding those problems that could arise if you haven't done a good plan. So
Yeah, it's being proactive.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're out there listening and you haven't done a plan, be proactive. Give us a call. Well, I thought we'd talk a little bit about wills and trusts. And a lot of people don't understand what a trust is. They have a good idea of what a will is, but don't really know how the will works versus how the trust works. So why don't you, if you don't mind talking about wills and how they work, that'd be a good start to educating them.
Yeah, absolutely. So with a will, it's essentially directions for after you pass away on what you want to happen to your stuff. And so you give away your assets and your things in the will. But what a lot of people don't know is that a will has to go through probate. And so it's directions for a court on how you want your assets to be distributed.
Right. I get that surprised look from a lot of clients when I mention to them that the will go through probate, and they think that a will avoids probate. And there are ways to avoid probate with just a will, but it's not always such a great idea.
Right.
So, for bank accounts and stock accounts, we can put beneficiaries on them. It's transfer on death or payable on death. That doesn't make sure things get wrapped up properly. And then talk about beneficiary deeds for houses and why that can be a really bad idea.
Right. So you can have a beneficiary deed for your house, which essentially says, upon my passing, I want my house to go to this person. But if a family has many children, that's going to be a nightmare as far as administering if everybody has 1/6 of an interest in this house. And it can also be messy because what if you leave it to one person, say, and what if that person predeceases you? Now, where is that house going? We're back in probate court.
Right. Right. I've had 2 different situations where there was a beneficiary deed and multiple beneficiaries, and neither went well. It was in one of them, I think the parents assumed they would sell the house and split the proceeds the way they directed, but they ended up just living there together for quite some time. In the other, they had one brother who was living there, and the family agreed to let him live there and then sell the house on his passing. But that can, if there's not an agreement, which often there isn't, then you really have a mess. You maybe have somebody who's taking the others to court to force a sale at that point. So an alternative to a will that lets you really plan ahead, have one person in charge who sells that house and distributes the proceeds or follows whatever the directions are, is the trust. You want to talk a little bit about how the trust works?
Right. So whenever you set up a trust, you can fund your assets into the trust. And so if we were setting up your trust plan, we would prepare a deed that would deed the property from you as the owner to you as the owner and trustee of your trust. And so upon your passing, the house immediately flows into the trust or through the trust, and the trustee is able to sell the house and distribute the proceeds to the beneficiaries.
Yeah. So much easier situation. The other thing is wrapping up the estate, which if you have beneficiaries on everything, then sometimes bills don't get paid. If one person has come out of pocket to pay funeral expenses or whatnot, they may not actually get reimbursed. It just comes out of their share. So your responsible child is the one who ends up getting hurt instead of just being in charge. and making sure everything gets taken care of and everybody gets the share that you intended for them.
Right.
So I like the trust for most people, but certainly there are situations where a will plan can work just fine for someone. And some people, they're okay with the idea of the will going to probate. If you live in California, you do not want that. In Arizona, it's not as expensive. We don't get a percentage of the estate like they do in California, but it's still expensive. It's time consuming. There's reporting to the court. It's public. Whereas the trust is very private, no reporting to the court. You just report to the other beneficiaries if you're the trustee about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
you've had a lot more experience in probate than I have. How long can assets be frozen in probate before the beneficiaries are able to distribute?
So it really depends. So certainly we have to give notice to creditors. The period for creditors to make claims is 4 months. So generally speaking, we're talking at least 5 to 6 months before money should be distributed to the beneficiaries. But we also potentially have other issues that arise that can postpone things. We have to file last tax return. So sometimes we're 2 years before the absolute final distribution is made, and we close up the estate. So yeah, it can be a while, but probably 6 months before there's any distributions. With the trust, some of those distributions can happen sooner. There can be some partial distributions along the way. It's a little easier for that to happen.
Right.
So,
right. Wow.
Absolutely. The other thing that clients often don't think about is incapacity. And that part of what we're planning for is making sure if they're not able to handle their own finances, somebody else can step in, including their spouse, who, isn't, just because a person is married to you doesn't mean they have full authority over all of your financial and legal life. So even if spouse needs the additional access that the estate plan can provide. So part of that is that financial power of attorney. It's called the durable power of attorney for finances, that says, here's who can file lawsuits for me, deal with my Social Security or Medicare, talk to insurance companies, all of those kinds of things, sign my tax returns, deal with the IRS for me. But the trust also provides incapacity planning too.
Yeah, and a will doesn't do that, is another key difference.
Yeah. And so that's an important part of the trust, as well as what I found is banks here accept the incapacity trustee who walks in with the proper paperwork very easily. Often, if you're just walking in with that durable power of attorney trying to deal with things, they've got to run it by their legal counsel to make sure it's okay, and it can mean delays, and sometimes just declining to take that power of attorney.
Yeah, and in Arizona, banks don't have to accept the durable powers of attorney.
Exactly. There's not a requirement in the law that created the powers of attorney saying that, if it meets these criteria, a bank has to accept it. So that's a real failing in the law.
Right. Yeah, and don't some banks have their own powers of attorney that they want people to fill out?
Yes. And so sometimes that can be a good addition even to a trust plan. If you've got an account, like an IRA, cannot go in the trust.
Right.
IRAs are individual retirement accounts. They have to stay in the individual's name. They pass by the beneficiary designation. But if you've got that at Schwab, they've got their own power of attorney form that you could fill out ahead of time which even with if you've got your own power of attorney and you've got that trust, could still be a really great idea to make sure you're really covered.
Right.
So, And those are some of the things that, with a law firm, working with a law firm, you learn more about that because we get those calls and we help clients, deal with those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next client that comes in would say, here's another good idea for you.
Yes.
You probably should do this also.
Yes.
And then you're going to be covered. And I say that just because I know there's a lot of advertising out there for some of the legal services that will do a will or a trust for you. But because they're not dealing with the aftermath, they sometimes don't know what you need to know, so they're not telling you how to make sure everything's in good order. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Allie, tell me a little bit more about you and some of the things you like to do. If you're willing to share a little bit about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my family, my dad served 30 years in the Air Force. And then he is also a full-time pilot at Southwest Airlines. And then my mom was an educator. She taught preschool for many years and then became a vice principal of her school. And we moved around a little bit since my dad was in the military growing up. But I was born in Kansas, which I know you're from Kansas. And then we moved to Japan for 3 years and then moved to Texas for a year. And then we moved to Arizona by the time I was 5. So I'm not a true native, but Arizona is my home. That's where my conscious memory is. And then I have 2 sisters. I have an older sister. She's in the Air Force now. She's, I can't say really like where she's stationed, but my younger sister is in the Army and she lives in Georgia. But yeah, and then as far as what I like to do in my personal time, I love to spend time with my friends and we really like to go to concerts and music festivals and enjoy live music. And then also love to go to yoga and Pilates and try to be active where I can. I'm in a book club, so I like to read. Yeah. So that's kind of what I enjoy doing.
Great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for those who don't know, I have 3 kids. Mm-hmm. 2 of them work for me. So my paralegal John is my son. My middle son, and then my youngest daughter, Emma, actually lives in Salem, Oregon now, worked in office for us, especially during COVID, but then she and her husband had wanted to move to more the Pacific Northwest. So she's up there and works for us remotely, mostly on the marketing side. So she'll be the one to deal with some of this podcast stuff. But also, we recently updated our software and she was instrumental in making that a really smooth transition. And then my oldest son has my 2 grandbabies, and they're in Thatcher, Arizona, and he is an accountant for the Freeport-McMoran mine there.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
My roommate in law school, she used to work for Freeport. She was a mining engineer.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And now she's a patent attorney.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a difference, right?
Yep.
Although I guess it kind of makes sense that those would go together, too. Mm-hmm. So, and I love to read, too. So a friend of mine might get me into a book club, and so that I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah. I love mysteries, are my favorite. Mm-hmm. And so I really enjoy that. I have some friends who are authors, and I meet with them once in a while, and we critique their work, and they need another reader, so I get to be that person. So that's very fun for me. And spending time with my granddaughters is always a treat.
How old are they?
They are almost 7 and 5.
Oh, fun.
So, yeah,
so fun.
7 in December. So, yeah, very, very fun. Very fun. They're, they still just love grandma. So I'm figuring teenage years, I don't know where it's going to go. But
yeah, we'll see.
And then we love to travel. I know you do too.
Oh, yeah.
So we have been to the Greek islands last year. That was a big bucket list trip for me. We're doing the Panama Canal next year. We like to cruise. We have some friends from Andy's college days who have cruised for years, and we've done a couple of cruises. So we tried a short one together and decided we were good travel companions.
Right.
So we get to do that with them.
Oh, that's loads of fun. Yeah, you're right. I do love to travel. After I graduated from law school, I went on a backpacking trip through Europe. And I was staying in hostels and kind of roughing it. And it's sad to think that I've aged out of hostels, but I don't think I'd go back to doing that again. And then this summer, I got to go to Belgium and Paris and Luxembourg. And then in the fall, I'm going to go to Seoul, Korea. So I'm excited to do that.
Fun. Yeah.
So.
And maybe eventually go back to Japan since you weren't old enough to remember living there.
Yes, I would love to do that.
Yeah. Australia is another one I'd love to do.
Oh, yeah.
Soon.
And New Zealand.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the other things that you do for us is you are working with our probate and trust administration paralegal, Karen.
Right.
So maybe we've just got a little bit of time left, but maybe you could talk a little bit about some of that work and how those go for the client and for the law firm.
Right. So we do a bit of probate work, and with probate, it's typically somebody's family member that has passed away, and they'll contact us and tell us, we need to probate the will or distribute some of the assets. So we kind of help them through that process. And then we also do trust administration for our clients, and they've prepared a trust previously, and then one of the grantors has passed away, and either their successor trustee or the surviving spouse comes in to administer the trust. And the trust administration, it's very smooth, especially if we were the ones that drafted the documents, like we know exactly where to look and how to tell them how to proceed. But sometimes probate can be a pain, just as far as hoops that we have to jump through to get assets distributed and notify creditors and all that stuff.
Or even to get somebody appointed to begin with.
Yes.
And it's much easier with a will. I think in the future, one of our podcasts should talk about what happens when there isn't a will and some of the problems that can arise. At least with a will, the person has appointed, here's who's going to be in charge, and here's how I want my assets to go.
Right.
If they haven't done a will, then the state has its own rules that they put into effect.
Right.
So the law says who could be your personal representative. They say who inherits from you and in what percentages. Right. And it's sometimes a real shock to somebody to find out that, I'm married to this person and I don't inherit everything. Yeah. So that would be a good one to talk about. Definitely. As well.
Definitely.
What I've found in the times that I've worked with probate clients and with trust administration is the trust administration people are like, this is so smooth. Yep. I have to get this in place for my kids because I want them to have it this smooth. And on the probate side of things, it usually, even if it's a pretty smooth probate, it's just not smooth.
Yes.
It's bumpy along the way. It's cumbersome, multiple visits to our office before they even have what they need to go access a bank account. Right. And definitely they also are saying, I want to trust so that
how
my
do
kids
I avoid this?
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that happens quite frequently where we'll have people come in, they're like, I just had a nasty probate for my family and I never want to go through that, or I never want my kids to go through that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll talk just a little bit as we're wrapping up about our process here in the office. So we offer a no-charge initial consultation to talk about your estate planning, whether you if you have a will or a trust, then we can talk about updates if you know you need them already. We booked that 1 hour appointment with either Allison or with me, and ask you to fill out a workbook. So the workbook really helps us to tailor our conversation to your specific situation. So wills versus trusts, we've already said for some people a will with beneficiaries can work. For some people a simple trust works. Some people need something more complex because of their situation, not necessarily because they've got a huge amount of money, but because maybe it's a blended family or other unique situations that we need to take into account. So filling out that workbook and really letting us know who we're planning for, what unique needs they might have, what assets we're looking at planning for, and getting to know a little bit about you before we walk in the room is just really lets us have a meaningful conversation and good recommendations for what would work for you. Then you want to talk about the rest of our process. So if somebody comes in and decides to hire us, what our next steps are.
Yeah, so after somebody decides to hire us and they've signed that engagement letter, we use that workbook that we've collected to prepare a draft of their estate plan. And then once we've drafted it, we'll call the client back to set up a review appointment, and we'll send them the draft document so that they have time to pour over the documents and make sure there's no spelling errors and really sit and think, like, is this how I want my plan to work? And then if they want any changes made, they can let us know ahead of time. And then at the review appointment, we'll go through all the documents with them, answer any questions that they have. And then once they approve the documents at that review appointment, then we move it forward to the signing. And at the signing, we typically have our notary / paralegal who will have them sign all of the documents, and then they'll be able to leave with those documents that day. We also scan them and save them to our system and then give them a flash drive so that they can have PDF copies of their executed trust.
And an important part of having a trust is also making sure that assets get put in the trust. So as you mentioned earlier, we prepare the deed for Arizona property to put that into the trust. If there's an out-of-state property, we will reach out to an attorney in that state to try to get a quote to get that property in, because then you could end up with the probate in 2 different states if you're not careful. And we also give a list of what's the next steps for the client to move bank accounts, stock accounts into the trust. What did we talk about in terms of who should be the beneficiary of the IRA? Is it the trust or is it individuals? And really make sure that that trust is going to work, because if we don't get the assets titled to the trust or beneficiaries done properly, we still can end up with a probate because we didn't get it all in good order. So we try very hard to make sure the client knows what they need to do and follows up, and that we do the part that's easy for us that sometimes is hard for the client, which is the real estate and getting that retitled. So. Yeah. Well, if you are interested in doing business with us or calling for an initial consultation, our number is 602-375-6752. We're the Law Office of Libby Banks, and we would love to see you here in the office.
Thank you for listening to the official podcast of the Law Office of Libby Banks. If you're in need of an estate plan, please reach out to our team by either calling 602-375-6752 or emailing info@libbybanks.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Just search the Law Office of Libby Banks. Free consultations apply to new and existing estate plans only. If an estate plan is not completed or was prepared by a third party, revisions will be given at an hourly rate. This has been a T-Door production. Music by Track Tribe.